All right, I think we're live.
We're live. Well,
Hello,
welcome
everyone.
everyone to the live video Q&A of Small is Beautiful, the movie. We're here with somebody's got some kids in the background there, Jeremy Beasley.
It's Fred's daughter, I
Chaos
think.
in the first moment.
Sorry.
This is live at its finest. We've got
Thanks.
Jeremy Beasley, who's the director and the driving force behind the film. He's in Portland, Oregon right now. And we have Chris Kamen, who is the producer and in Melbourne, Australia right now.
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
We have Fred Schultz, whose tiny home was featured at the Small is Beautiful premiere in Melbourne as well.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about the screaming.
My name's Katie Daly. I work with a local nonprofit in Australia, the Alternative Technology Association, and we produce Sanctuary Magazine, which will be featuring an article about the film and is a media sponsor for this production. So thanks everybody for coming along and watching. Maybe like to start out with a question to Jeremy on what was the driving force behind producing the film.
I started out just wanting to build my own tiny house, and then I started interviewing people and had 15 interviews within a week, and I thought, oh, maybe there's something interesting here. So ended up following the whole story for what has become 2 years now of learning about tiny houses and making this film, and it's probably the most exciting day right now because we're actually letting people see it. But I really wanted to build my own tiny house, and unfortunately I don't have my own tiny house yet, but we've got a film, so that's a start.
Well, it is really an excellent film, and everybody that I've talked to that has seen it loves it. So you've done a really excellent job. How long you worked on it again? For 2 years, you said?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much 2 years to the day, actually. I'd have to check the old Instagram here because it tells you how many weeks it was, and I put up a picture from when I was traveling of the first day that I started drawing in my notebook about tiny houses and wanting to make my own and start making a film about one. So yeah,
Jeremy, that
2 years to the day.
picture is like you in the cave, like trapped, making like one day at a time, 1 week at a time.
Right, exactly. Just like next line, next line.
How long did you think this whole project was going to take you when you started?
I thought I'd be finished in 3 months, and that'd be like, oh yeah, the film would be done, it'd be on the website, and then I'd go off and build my tiny house. And I even had a really good friend of mine, Dave, who's an amazing architect, designing a tiny house for me, and he has designed it. He's got the 3D renders, has material sheets and everything, and it's a really fancy, amazing-looking tiny house. And I had to say to him during it, I'm like, look, man, I'm kind of doing this film, and I think I won't be able to build a tiny house for a while. So we had to put the brakes on that one, and now, here we are, nearly 2 years on. So it's just like building a tiny house. It takes way longer than you think it will.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my question, Jeremy. So after talking to the people in the film, what are your expectations now around building a tiny house and what it's going to take, and do you see it in your future still?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely see it in my future, but just talking about the one that Dave had designed for me, it was incredible with like solar panels online, and it had water storage inside the tiny house where it would collect its own rainwater and everything. Like, it was really, really well designed and completely off grid. It was really cool. But it was going to be very big and very heavy, and now what I would do is more build a small sort of simple Vardo, like a bedroom on wheels to park in someone's backyard, hopefully in Melbourne, and build it as small and as simple and as lightweight as possible.
Sounds good. So Fred, that's a good transition to you because you're in the middle of building a tiny home right now. How do your experiences building your house compare to the movie?
Oh, well, there was quite a bit that I related to in the movie, particularly about just assessing your social supports that you have. You know, you can kind of get involved in the building and the how-to and plumbing and carpentry and do I have the skills, but one of the things that I do now that Jeremy's film is out, I direct people to the film as a way of helping clue them to what might be required in terms of their social network. And I'll tell you, if it wasn't for the social network that I had around me, I wouldn't be have gotten as far as I've gotten, and it's not finished yet. So
Yeah.
I related to Nikki's statement in particular about it took anger. It was about she said there was a lot of anger in these walls as she worked through relationships with her father, I think, and yeah, I felt that as well. Not my dad, but other things, yeah.
Yeah. And so where are you in the process? How far along are you, and when do you think you're going to be moving in?
We'll probably be finished sometime in early July, and we've gotten just put the insulation in, so I'm getting ready for the lining board, and then I'm going to learn a little bit of kitchen cabinetry, and as I've had to do along the way, you learn as you go.
And so you're going to be living there with your wife and a baby that we met earlier.
Yeah.
How do you picture that? Do you think, how does your experience different from maybe those of the people that were featured in the film?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, just what Jeremy was saying, I was reflecting on how Jeremy's design has changed of the tiny house that he'd like, and I designed it as a single person, a single guy, as Jeremy still is. You still single, Jeremy?
Yeah. Look, you know, it depends how you look at the world, really.
Very cagey answer.
We're going to cut that one short.
We'll cut that one short, but I think that his design, Jeremy, if he finds that he has a baby, the design of that tiny house is going to change. It changed for me when I became partnered and married Shannon. The tiny house got a toilet and a shower, a toilet and a bath. And I think it'll change a little bit more now that Olena is on the scene, particularly around safety sorts of issues with the loft and the wood heater. There's some things for us to work out yet on that.
Yeah. Chris, how did you get involved with the film?
How did you get in touch with me, Jeremy? We just connected up somehow. I think it was thanks to the guys at Possible, who Jeremy originally crowdfunded the film through. And I think, Jeremy, you probably got into this project in about a year and then kind of realized you needed to get some help to finish this whole thing off. So I came on board mid last year, so in around June 2014, and we've been working steadily on this to finish the edit, figure out what the story was in the film, and hone down to those final four characters. And then we kind of been working hard to distribute and launch the film today. So today really is the culmination of 2 big years of work for Jeremy and a year of work for me. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, good job, you guys.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations to you guys. Yeah, well done.
Well, thanks, Fred.
So we have some questions that came in via the blog. Maybe we can open up some of those. The first question is from Rachel, and it is, what do you do with all your possessions that don't fit in your tiny home when you move in?
What are you going to do, Fred?
We're going to pare down, and we're already getting rid of stuff. Or you can do what everybody else buys, you can buy storage space, which just pain me to have to pay for storage. But yeah, you get rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started doing a thing about 2 years ago when I started to travel a lot, and every 6 months, if I hadn't used something, I would either throw it out or donate it or sell it or whatever it might be. And I've heard of people doing that and taking it even more extreme and taking it down to either a number of items, or if they haven't used it within a month or 2 months or something like that, as a really good way to be like, do I even need this thing, you know, this mug or this other object that is one of several. You know, do we need to have that, or can we get rid of it or give it to someone else who might have a better use for it?
Well, it really opens up the sharing economy as well. You start realizing that there are other resources that you may have to be able to get things that you only use once or twice a year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like there's actually a library that has books in it in your neighborhood, right? Like, it's crazy. And tool libraries, so you don't need to buy all the tools and things like that. So, yeah, definitely going to make...
You're into car sharing too, Jeremy?
Yeah, so I sold my car and do car sharing when I need one, which is pretty rare. Bike and public transport can get me most places, but every now and then you need a car. And I think that's more and more the way we're going these days is, you know, sharing rather than being like, oh, we all need a lawnmower. Like, not everybody needs a lawnmower if you're only going to use it once a week or something like that.
Exactly. So let's go to the next question from Amelia Barnes, and it was, do tiny house owners ever crave more alone time?
Well, out of all of us here, Fred's the only one who is a tiny house owner. Do you want to answer that, Fred, or do you want to...
Well, I got to say that we haven't lived in this tiny house yet as a family, but we have lived in tiny spaces in the past, and earbuds are wonderful things. You have some on now, Jeremy, and, you know, if you need some privacy and you're really desperate, you know, somebody puts in the earbuds and turns on some music. You know, they're just creative ways you can do around getting privacy. We also anticipate that we might build a second tiny house as sort of a rumpus room breakout space. So, yeah, it's a good question, though.
With a
I think that was in the movie as well. With the couple in the movie said if they were going to do it over again, they'd build a his and hers with a sky bridge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not an easy thing for anyone, I don't think, if you're going to have more than just one person in your tiny house to sort of adapt to it. But totally possible. I haven't heard anyone ask or say that they need more alone time. I think everyone who I know who has a tiny house, who I have interviewed and chatted with, does get a lot of alone time from their tiny house anyway. So, yeah.
So another question that came through had to do with codes and regulations, and I'm sure that based on where you are, what city you're in, there's probably different progress being made in that. But do you want to comment a little bit on where we are, both in Portland in the United States and here in Australia?
Yeah, well, in Portland, I actually found out last week that there's been a bunch of people chatting with the city of Portland to make tiny houses be classified as ADUs, which is an accessory dwelling unit. And they've been chatting with the mayor and all the people on the council to make this happen, and it seems like it might happen within the next 12 months, which would be really cool if it did, because Portland would be the first city to do it, and then people would follow and other cities would follow behind it, and hopefully we could do something similar in Australia and make it legal.
And so, Jeremy, an ADU is like a granny flat, is the Portland version of an Australian granny flat, yeah?
Yeah, that's what we call it in Australia, is a granny flat.
Yeah, it's a term in Australia as well.
Yeah.
So tiny houses are looking to be classified in the same way soon in Portland.
Yeah, so the way they work, it's super complicated, but there's like attached ADU, which is when it's like with a bigger house on the same block, and there's detached ones where there's multiple, and there's interesting things that happen if you take out, I think it's a kitchen or a bathroom, I can't remember which. If you take those out, you can actually have up to like 5 or 6 in your backyard. So if they're studios, which
not houses.
Not houses. It's more of like studios. So there's interesting ways around it, and it's still being developed, and hopefully we find out soon how this progression happens in Portland.
So is the legitimizing, if you will, of tiny homes by classifying them as ADUs getting any resistance from people in the movement? Is it going to affect the cost? And do people have to permit and do some other things that will change the nature of the movement?
Yeah, I'm hearing half and half. Like half of the tiny house people are really excited about it because they're like, this is great, this is legal, this is like legitimizing what we're doing and making it possible for more people. But the other half are saying, well, if it takes away the DIY nature, it'll make it more expensive. There'll be more things you have to sort of fall into in terms of building regulations and what kind of zoning regulations there will be, and then how will that translate and how much money will people have to pay. So yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword, and only time will tell on how it works, I think.
Yeah, okay. One more question I have. How many tiny homes are currently in Australia? What's the movement like here in Australia?
Well, we know Fred's got one. So, to my knowledge, there's somewhere between 6 and a dozen tiny houses that exist that people are living in the sense of a tiny house on wheels. But I think there's probably 10 or 20 being built just from what I see happening online right now. So, yeah, do you know any more than that, Fred? What have you sort of come across?
Well, I guess I've come across people who've been doing it for a while now, and they've been doing it under the radar and outside the purview of the councils. So even though we call it a movement, they've been around a while. Just people have been very quiet about them. I saw a very innovative one that was on the back of an old railroad caboose sort of thing. Yeah, but you know, they also said don't tell anybody because they didn't want to be found out.
Well, so Fred, you probably have a sense of this. We've got another question about, is there a market for prefab tiny homes in Australia? And what's been your response since the movie's premiered?
Yeah, well, probably not so much the movie, because I think the movie, we got the people who were the do-it-yourselfers there, mostly. I don't know, you know, Jeremy and Chris would be able to say a little bit more about that, but I think that since some of the news pieces, and particularly the television that came out in Sydney, I've had a heap of phone calls, just how much, and can you build me one, I want one, which is really does go against sort of some of the spirit of the movement, I think, which it has to do with changing your life and not just having a tiny house as another possession. So, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, oh, I want one of those.
It's hard to not say that though when you see them.
Yeah, I want another one.
So I have another question came through about tiny homes are wonderful, but a bit of a niche. Would a cottage house movement be more practical for a wider acceptance and impact? And maybe Jeremy, you can respond to that.
I'm not 100% sure what a cottage house means.
Maybe something a little larger, but still small by the standards of both Australia and the United States.
Yeah, so that's probably what I see as being the best way around balancing the legalities, balancing people, you know, with multiple people and kids and all that sort of stuff, is something around sort of 30 square meters or even less that can be built by itself and doesn't need to have a bigger house on it, so it's not like an ADU, it can just be detached by itself. I see that, particularly prefab, so it can be done cheaper, they can do it more environmentally friendly and make the process happen in a really well designed way, an environmentally friendly way. That is probably the future, the way I see it, for affecting a lot of people and the way a lot of people live. But there's a long way to go between now and then, I'd say.
Yeah, the Sanctuary magazine, which we work on, the one that's coming out with the review of the movie, is about prefab, modular, and tiny homes. and there is quite a market in Australia and quite a lot going on in that space, and I know there is in the United States as well. So, and around all over the world. So there's a lot of exciting things I think going on, and yeah, really a lot of work on the sustainability side of them as well. So we have one more question. Oh, somebody wrote in that they know of at least 15 tiny houses that are either done or being done in Australia in present, so that's good news. A little higher in total.
Yeah, I think that's Darren. That's Darren from Tiny Houses Australia, I'd say.
Darren. But hopefully the film spurs on more. I mean, I was just up in Brisbane doing a screening there last week, and after the screening, there was a bunch of us, about 10, who came out and had coffee afterwards, and we're really inspired to start actually committing some action to these ideas. And I'm hoping that we'll see a little bit of an explosion happen in Australia off the back of the film.
Yeah, I was just in I'm in Portland right now, and we had the Tiny House Conference about a week and a half ago, and there were 6 Australians there from Brisbane as well, Chris, who came over and they wanted to find out more about the tiny house thing, and they were so excited to head back to Australia and get started and build their own tiny house.
So before Southeast Queensland is going to become an epicenter of the tiny house movement.
That sounds like it, yeah.
Well, it's a great climate up there to live in, like a simple little house, as opposed to the climate in, say, North America, where the design approach is a lot different. So I'm really interested to see how different regions adapt the designs to match the climate. So Jeremy, you kind of talk us through the American design is very insulated, right? And
yeah, exactly. So because particularly in Oregon, winter, it gets pretty cold and it rains a lot, so you actually want the house to be super warm. So having a loft is fantastic. So you can sort of snuggle up there and cuddle in with your doona or duvet and stay nice and warm. But in Australia, you'd have to design your house really, really well to make the loft a good sleeping temperature at nighttime. And Fred, I know, has put some interesting insulation and radiant heat barriers in his house. Maybe he can speak a little bit about that and how that design is particularly for Australia.
Yeah, sure. I think that what Chris is saying is that there will be an evolution, and I think of the design. And in Australia, of course, our problem isn't holding on to the heat in winter. It's keeping the summer sun heat out of your tiny house, in particular if you're in a loft. So yeah, having radiant barriers, I think you'll see those. I think you'll probably see a lot of verandas, or you'll see if people are going off the grid, they'll park them in shade and then have their solar systems sort of separate in the sun. So the trick is we have beautiful sun for making electricity, but it will heat up your house. And if you're using traditional building techniques, I think you'll find that it's going to be hot in there, particularly if you go with too big of windows.
Yeah. And there are quite a few climatic zones in Australia as well, so there'll be differences based on where you are in Australia.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have another question that has to do with kind of how do tiny house owners operate in modern society without a registered address? And I think that speaks to a number of different like dilemmas or hurdles that people have to get over.
Yeah, I was thinking about that question before we got started, and then I was thinking, how long has it been since I've had just a normal address in my own life? And I was like, I think just getting a PO box is really a solution to a lot of it. I guess it'll be tricky once getting a license or anything like that. But the way that I see tiny houses being effective is you're generally parked in someone else's backyard, so you just use that address. So I don't know. It's never been an issue that's come up. I think people find a way to adapt and work out whatever it is they're doing, or maybe they send their mail to a friend's house or a parent's house. I'm not sure.
Well, I think we've dealt with all the questions that are online. Are there any other, Chris, that you can think of?
No, I think we've covered all our bases. So if anyone's watching now, quickly get your question in on Twitter or on our blog. Otherwise, you'll miss out. But we'll be back. When are we doing our next one, Jeremy? In another 6 hours or 12 hours or so, or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
The middle of the night, and you've been up for about 24 hours, so you're a little bit delirious. Jeremy.
Right, I'm surprised I'm still actually awake right now, to be honest. It's nearly 3 o'clock in the morning, but we're there, and the film is released, and it's out to the world, and people can watch it, so that's pretty exciting.
And where can everybody get a copy of the film?
On our website, smallbeautifulmovie.com, you can download it there, and it's also on iTunes and Vimeo on demand as well.
And where can they see it if they're in a city?
We've got some screenings coming up in Seattle, in Boise, in Idaho, potentially in San Diego, in California. And what are the Australian ones, Chris, happening?
We're kind of finishing up our Australian tour. We did a bunch of screenings around Australia just to get us started. Obviously we launched in Melbourne, Canberra, Albury, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, and we've got our final one happening over in Perth on Monday, I believe. So yeah, but we're hoping to do more. Hopefully that's just the start. We're using this fantastic system where anybody can host a screening or to request to host a screening and bring it to their town. So I was really amazed when, I don't even know how to pronounce the town. Is it Boise, Jeremy?
Boise, yeah.
Boise. I've never even heard of this town, and it's amazing that out of the woodwork comes people from the internet who want to see the film, and they can just bring it to their town as simple as clicking a button. So it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the starting process. So if anyone wants to see it come to their town, please just jump on the website, and there's a button there. If there's not a screening in your town, you can organise to bring one. So help us out with that. Otherwise, yeah, we are just celebrating the launch of the film online. Oh, I think we've lost Katie. Katie looks a little...
No. Well, that sounds like a good time to wrap it up. So thanks, Fred and Chris, for hanging out and chatting, and thanks to Katie for hosting. Unfortunately, it looks like she's disconnected, but...
Perfect time. She's out of here.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks, guys. Well done.
Thanks, Fred.
Have a great time in America, Jeremy.
Yeah, we'll do.
And thanks everyone for watching in. Thanks for the questions. It was really cool. This is the first time we've tried anything like this, so it's been fun. Ciao.
All right, bye.
See you guys.